Welcome to Logistical Lies, where we expose the truth in the trucking industry. I'm your host, Miranda Johnson. Join me as we navigate the challenges of balancing love, relationships, mental health, and finances as we reach our goals. This podcast is for men and women alike. Get ready to break barriers and thrive. Let's uncover the lies of the industry and the ones we tell ourselves so we can pave a path to success. Thanks for joining Logistical Lies with Miranda J. Let's go. Hello and welcome back to Logistical Lies with Miranda J. Thank you so much again for joining. I hope the last couple of sessions have been great. I call them sessions because, again, it's like therapy, not just for you, but obviously for me. I'm getting an opportunity to really go back over things that I struggled with for a long time. And I'm just going to adjust this because I feel like it's really in my face there. Okay, there we go. But for me, it's going backwards. It's trying to now determine areas that I just wasn't really good at. And how do I not repeat the same mistakes? So this series, we're going to have some exciting stuff actually, because finally I'm going to be interviewing. I kind of stayed away from interviewing for a minute just because I wanted to kind of find my pattern, make sure things were done properly. So now I'm excited. If you are actually interested in being interviewed and wanting to be on the show, again, it's the Logistical Lies by Miranda J. And, if you're a truck driver, if you're in the industry, if you're in business, if you really understand or relate to the things that I talk about, I would love for you to join me on the show because I think the more perspective, the better. I mean, I am obviously a woman. Now you got to say it, right? I am a woman and I have a certain perspective. I'm also a woman that started having kids at 16 years old. So there could be another person who hasn't had any children yet that has a totally different perspective or waited later in life, did things more a traditional way. I, had some traditional aspects of my life, but majority of it has been not. So I open and I welcome conversation that allows me to think outside of what I currently do all the time. But this particular topic, I would like to dive into, and I'm going to be honest, this is a really hard one for me because it's really admitting my truth and who I really am. And this is tough. And I think with this topic, I can't even really dive 100% in and be fair without having more people join the show so I can really pull out my truth. I'm going to be as on top as I can and dive in as much as I can. But I know the next sessions will get more into this topic so that it is fair that you get to really feel heard and understood, and that it doesn't seem like someone's just trying to, pretend that all will be fine now. But I really want to get into this because I think it's something that we know what's happening, but we pretend that we're above that. And the truth is we're not. And I'm going to just take a little swig because it's breakfast for me right now. I got to eat. I got to drink. So I'm so sorry that I'm going to have to do this. I'm human. Okay, I got to eat. Anyway, so relationships, disputes, arguing, and going too far. You saw I dropped my eyes with the going too far. Let me kind of back up a little bit. So I know many people do not, well, I think there's kind of a toss-up with understanding horoscopes and signs and things like that. And I get it. I get it on both sides. I was raised Christian, so I totally understand the annoyance that people have with that. But I also was raised by a dad who traveled all over the world and understood all religions and all aspects of beings and whatever somebody wanted to believe, and he respected that. My mother, who was a pastor, also respected it. She had her feelings, she had her beliefs on it, very strong beliefs in Christianity, but she never
told anybody they were wrong or a certain way. So I had a very open form of communication when it came to religious beliefs and things like that. So when I talk about horoscopes or anything like that, it's not for anyone to say this is what you should be understanding or this is what you have to do. Definitely not. It's just something that is very normal for me, and maybe for somebody else it wasn't. And when I say that very normal, I mean just like this. Like when I was born, I was born September 28th. Yay. And my dad was born October 19th. So because of that, we're both Libras. And just fun fact, just have to throw this out. I've been searching for my great grandfather. Oh, sorry, that's a lie. I've been searching for my great grandfather. Why did I say so many greats? Great grandfather, and I just recently discovered his birthday was October 14th, which means we were all Libras. So my dad was a Libra, his dad was a Libra, I was a Libra. I am a Libra, and my dad is as well because he's still alive. So the thing is, when I was younger, my dad could not stop boasting about him having a Libra daughter. I'm talking about, I remember 2, 3 years old. My daddy always saying, my Libra girl, my Libra baby, my Libra. Like it, I didn't even know what a Libra was. I just knew I was a Libra like my dad. So that's what I mean by, for me, it was just something that we always did. And we used to, tons of Chinese food. My dad was obsessed with anything Chinese. And we used to look at, your signs, your calendar. He really loved that kind of stuff. So it was never a big deal. I don't think I realized that there was any negativity towards it until we moved to the US. And that's when, I heard more about it. But anyway, I just wanted you to kind of understand, if I mention anything about signs or things like that, it is because of what I have an understanding of, not because I feel like anybody should be following that. So there's too much more to life to follow any one thing. Okay, now I said that. And the reason why I said that is because my dad and me, being of a similar sign, our behaviors were sometimes, well, definitely most of the time, looked at as, very strong personalities. Say what you want, mean what you say. My dad's matter of fact way of saying things: let your yes be yes and let your no be no. That's it. You don't lie because you ain't afraid of nobody, right? So there was a lot of strong personality, and my dad he was very charismatic. He is very, how can I say? And I love my daddy. You can tell just the way I'm talking. But my daddy is the type of person where he was fun. I mean, people just magnetically came to him, and he had a ball of energy. But when he was mad, it's like the house shook. When he didn't like something, you knew it. There wasn't any balance in between. And if he was going to say it, it was going to sting. So I learned that. It was a learned behavior. And in my understanding, it was a Libra behavior, right? So I actually took pride and joy in that, we were this beast, like strong, charismatic, loving, but, we took no prisoners type of personality. And as a woman, for me, it was even amazing because I definitely hurt, but I hurt differently because I felt very empowered by my dad in a way, and my mom as well. But I felt very empowered by him that, hey, I could just do as I say. I'll find another one. I'll move on. It's fine. I don't have to, sit here. If you want to feel this way, feel that way. If I'm right, I'm right. And it does not matter anything else because I am right. Well, anybody want to know how that worked out? It didn't. It doesn't. So disputes, arguing, going too far. I like to really make sure that people know that this is a podcast for truck drivers. It is so much so because I identify so much with truck drivers and how we have to have these conversations and how we have to dispute. It's not fair and it's not the same. It is not, and I don't want to down people in the military and other people who travel. It's just a little different. When you're literally in that truck driving and you're trying to handle a dispute or a disagreement, and your mind is, you got people calling your phone and your mind is in so many different places, you can be dangerous on the road, number one, and you can really hold in a lot of hurt because you end up, feeling alone. And I'm speaking for my husband a lot as well when I say this, and that's why I said this conversation won't stop here, because he has to get on the show. He has to, because he's got to tell his side of it. And I have perspectives of the men and women that are going to have to get into this conversation for me to really lay it out. But having disputes, I can only tell you one that sticks out the most. And it sounds like a really silly dispute, but it was our first argument. I want to say it wasn't our first argument in our marriage, but it was our first argument that I felt like lasted too long. And when I mean by lasted too long, I mean like years. I mean, it was the same repetitive thing. We kept going back to that time, and it wasn't a spot that got healed. And what happened was this. Exactly. Again, he's got to come on the show, but this is what happened. So my husband got his CDL in 2011. And around this time, I had been working for Samsung. So I did a lot of traveling back and forth with Samsung. Of course, once he started driving over the road, the idea was for me to come home, work from home, and find something more local, like be around doing my regular store visits and not doing a lot of traveling, which I did that. For a while, Josh was absolutely like girl dad. He was, my Nadia was probably 1. I know she was still nursing, so she was probably 1. And I was literally trying to nurse and come back, pump milk and come back, and he was dealing with all that. He worked kind of a day shift. He worked pretty much during the day doing one thing, and then he had a night shift job, but he was home with the girls. So schoolwork, daycare drop-offs with Nina, anything you could think of, he was 1,000% in that. And I actually was the one who was catching them after 5 or 6. And Josh was the one who was making sure the food was ready. And then he had his job that he was working with right before he got a CDL, and he went over and worked overnights. So, and of course, I was nursing. So I had this little girl who was waking up and, still wanted me. So we kind of were doing what needed to be done. I'd make sure everything was good for the morning. So then we kind of swapped out. And it worked. I thought we did actually a pretty good job. We, money wasn't great, but we did everything we could to make things, balance. And when I say money, it was just a weird time. We were, moving in together and trying to just balance everything. So it was odd, but we made it work. Then it had to flip. I now was home more. Josh had started with Conway, and I believe the first 90 days with Conway was mandatory that you had to be over the road, and you were with a trainer, I think the first 4 to 6 weeks. So he got lucky and ended up having a really great trainer. He went over the road, but I don't think we ever really talked about what it would be like to communicate household. We never really talked about, okay, I will fill you in on these things, and we'll talk this many times a day so that we don't feel like we're getting separated. We never had that conversation. It was just like, okay, go and grow. We'll get back and we're gonna make some money, and we're gonna take care of these kids, and we're gonna be great. We never talked about what the expectations were, and because we just had a system, and I don't think I realized that he needed anything in addition other than to come home to a home that is peaceful, right? And I remember him getting, sometimes we would have phone calls, and he would get agitated or irritated in these phone calls. And I'm like, well, what's up? One thing, I'll still admit to this day, is I can be a phone person, but I'm really not a phone person. Oh God, that sounds so bad. I'm not a phone person with my significant other. I know that sounds so terrible. Okay. How can I say this? Because I feel like we already around each other all the time. And if we're sitting on the phone all day long, what will we talk about later? I know I'm doing better now. I'm just saying that when he first went on the road, I'm in my world. You know what I mean? And sitting on the phone and managing children just wasn't ideal. And then by the end of the night, like I said, I was still had young kids in the house. Remember, we have 5 daughters. And then at night, I'll talk to you, tell you a couple things, and I'm off the phone. And I understand now how that made him feel. I didn't then. I thought it was no big deal. I thought he understood our schedule. He knew I went to sleep at a certain time. He knew that, he understood how the day works. And we didn't talk all day long when I was traveling. So I didn't see why now we would start doing that. And it was a problem. Also was a problem was that the girls would, let's say they had an assignment at school and they did their assignment, or the teacher gave us information or sent an email. I was like, all right, cool, handled it. I felt like if it was handled, there wasn't anything to talk about. My husband was not okay with that because he felt like, and again, he's going to have to come on the show, but my understanding is that he felt like I wasn't keeping him in the loop and he felt isolated. And that argument, it festered. I mean, it became he was very mad. And it was honestly just because we never communicated expectations. And those 90 days, I hate to say it, became the basis of many more arguments of not communicating and not understanding that you let me down, or you made me feel lonely, and you made me feel like I wasn't a part of the house. And on my side is, I'm holding it down and taking care of it, and you're not appreciating me. And so now you have these two forces. You got my personality that is like, hey, you got to make me feel bad? I don't need you. And I was angry. He was angry. And it's just two angry people who are committed to their kids, who are committed, because that's the difference with us. And I said, a lot of people that I meet, even though we get very angry at each other, we don't give up. So we're type of people who are going to keep going into it in the worst toxic way. That's not good either. But we stayed very toxic because we were like, we had this vision for our family. We're going to get these goals. We're going to buy this house. We're going to do these things. And we were doing all those things. Those things were happening because of who we were, as we're hard workers and very dedicated to it. But we were not happy. We had moments of happiness. We had times where, those are, because they don't sit all day long, do they? They kind of remind you something will happen. Oh, you remember in 2011, that summer when you went on the road, you didn't appreciate me. Oh no, you didn't communicate with me. My daughters were going to school and you didn't even tell me this was going on. It happened for years. And for anybody who's listening to this podcast that's been in a relationship, I think you know what I mean by over years, because it'll keep popping up. Forgiveness was being said. We said we're not going to bring it up anymore, and it would come right back up again. Because the truth is, it became like part of a dumb foundation of our relationship, which it didn't even matter. It just was, we didn't communicate what our expectations are when he got over the road. We didn't know. Honestly, I don't think we knew what to communicate, because for me, I was pretty independent in the sense of I'm okay with my man, being over the road and driving and being gone for weeks and weeks at a time, because I'm, usually pretty occupied on my own. And for me, it never was something where I felt like jealousy or insecure or like I have to be on the phone with you. I felt like we made a plan at home, we'll carry it out. There's no difference. And that, that was just a trust thing. There was nothing else. I feel like for him, it was also a trust thing, but it was just also like, I still need to know what my girls are doing. And for me, I'm like, they'll tell you, call them, they'll tell you. And that's not fair, because I see it now. I definitely see it now. Then I didn't. I felt like, you're coming home, the house is clean, you got food, you're good. You're good. And, that became just, it went too far. And of course, this is tiled disputes, arguing and going too far. And when I say going too far, I mean that. It got to the point where I honestly thought for a long time that my husband hated me. I really did. For a long time, I just felt like, he's with me because he just loves the hell out of these girls. And he can't see himself without them. And he's just tolerating me. I felt like that, I want to say, even up to last year. Also, a lot of things like going too far were things we said to each other. It's hard for me to even think about the things that we said, because it's so far from the truth. But we were so angry. I mean, we were so angry, like bad mom, bad dad. You just heard me say all the things he was as a dad, and you obviously, he met me when I had my daughters. Well, for the first four. So obviously, he didn't think I was a bad mom. This almost makes me emotional, because I have to think about the mean-spirited things that I actually said. It wasn't just him, it was on both sides. Lazy, I know, was one of the words that was thrown out. Just feeling like, saying I don't love you, I hate you, I'm not, I don't want to be around you. Just everything that would hurt someone. And we definitely had many times where we separated, came back. And I don't know. I really can't tell you why it always got so bad. I just know that I remember my daughters getting to a point where they were just like, I'll just leave each other alone. And that hurt. That hurt a lot. And I smile when I say that now, because I know where we are now and where we were there is just different. And let me say this. I don't condone this in any way, and I don't tell people to stay in toxic environments. If you can't handle it, don't do it. And okay, let me say that right. It's not about handling it, but don't stay in anything that's toxic for too long. That's why we separated so many times, because I definitely needed my peace, and it was not easy. And I think that obviously we started our business together, and that was in the midst of all of this. So it kept us, I think, even longer together, because we had a lot of things invested, and of course we had bought a house, and we just did a lot. So it wasn't all bad, but when it was bad, it was really bad. I mean, I have to now apologize to my kids. I already did, for the arguments. And I wasn't good at walking away. I wasn't good at backing down, because like I said, I was taught that, hey, you want to stand up, let's go. And I felt like there was so many times that I was in defense mode, and I didn't need to be, but I didn't know I didn't need to be. I mean, there were so many times when he was just like, I'm not even trying to harm you. I'm not even saying that. But it was, for me, it's what you're insinuating, is what I felt like you might be saying. And I think this conversation is really hard doing it alone. Because I know I hurt him a lot. And I know that we hurt each other a lot. And now I'm in a space to say, when there was a lot of times that I can be honest and say, I was scared after some arguments because he still had to drive or I still had to travel. And I would think about, what if he doesn't come home? And that's the last thing I said. I think there's a lot of arguments that I ended up calling that night to have another conversation so that I could just sleep well, knowing that I made some type of peace. Because my mother always said never go to bed angry. So I would always make that last phone call, that last text. And I remember a couple times where he didn't answer, and because he would fall asleep or he always answered. I will say this: Josh always answers my calls, but there was times he would fall asleep. Or the notorious, if you know Josh, his battery's always dead. And I would have a panic because I would be like, oh my God, we just said just awful things. And what if he's in a ditch somewhere? Or what if this happened? Or what if this happened? And I have just said something that I can't take back. Or, maybe I'm really, and God, I got to be honest. And it's not easy. I'm praying I don't cry because I have to be so honest. Because if I don't tell the truth, I can't help you. I can't. That's just the truth. If I don't tell the God's honest truth about what has been transpiring with managing a business, with being a wife, and being a mother of 5 amazing daughters, if I cannot tell the absolute truth, who am I really, and I'm not crying, not yet, but who am I really helping if I'm just going to keep playing the game? But I definitely got angry enough sometimes, and I said to him, I just hope you get in an accident on the road. I said that. I said, I just hope you don't make it home. I mean, that's how bad these arguments were. That's why I said these are not simple. They weren't simple. They were very hurtful things we did and said to each other. And now I'm all I've been doing is trying to make up for it. I had to breathe that out a second. But yeah, I used to say things like that. And I know I said it more than once. And then when I would calm down, I would be like, oh my God, I just said that. I just said the most terrible thing. And what if that happens? And, he's had accidents on the road. And I think to myself, like, what if that day he didn't come home because you went too far? And over what? Over what? Finance, feeling angry, feeling sad, feeling like over what? But I know it when you're trying to balance. And then here's the thing: you're only seeing each other sometimes every 2 to 3 weeks, so you don't have enough time sometimes to sit and just be okay. And then you may be intimate really quick, when you see each other, and then the person's gone again, but you haven't healed from anything. You're just more intimate because you've been away from each other, and now it's time to be together. And it's, it just becomes this terrible cycle of, you're high, you're low, you're high, you're low. And it's just like, you don't really deal with the problems. You don't really deal with how terribly hurt you are. And what you're doing is you're just sitting there and you're just holding and festering. And then you say the worst thing to each other. And then you go back and you try to plan a family event, start a new business or do things to show that, hey, I'm committed, I'm here, and we're going to work it all out. And you're just in this terrible cycle. And we were in just the worst cycle. And we didn't have, if I'm being honest, I didn't have anybody else that was doing the things that we were doing that understood how to really help us. Everyone kind of told us the same thing, like, well, you guys are doing a lot, so, it's to be expected. So I mean, honestly, I just felt like it was kind of normal. After a while, it got normal, and then until it did. Um, I know now. I have to breathe for a second. I know now, the things that I was taught sometimes when I was younger were not the best things, but they were meant to protect me. And I felt like I always needed to have this form of protection that I surrounded myself with, and I took that into this relationship. It would have been perfect if I was single, maybe, right? If I just wanted to stay single, and actually no, it wouldn't have been, because you still have kids. You can't live a life thinking that you can say what you want and do what you want. And that's actually crazy, because just recently I had that conversation with somebody who was saying that if I feel it, I should just say it. If I think it, I should just say it. And then I said to myself, no, you really shouldn't, because nobody asked you for that. And sometimes you're saying things that are just negative, and you're putting out so much more negativity, and all that person is remembering is the negative, negative, negative. I mean, you're not pointing out, oh, I love your hair, I love this about you, and I love that about you. You just want to say the negative because it's a fact, and you feel like it's a fact, but the truth is, it's your facts, it's your perspective. And that's something I felt like that Josh and I were not good at. We were so busy pointing out facts and what we feel and what we say, and saying it how we feel it, and just being very matter of fact, that it was damaging us, because everything did not need to be said. Every point did not need to be made. And we were consistent about trying to always make points, and always trying to, make sure that the other person understood what we were saying. And sometimes you don't need to do all that. Sometimes you just need to say, you know what? I don't get your perspective, but I see that it means something to you. And on this particular area, I'm going to back off. Or you did see it that way all those years ago, and it hurt you, and you felt isolated. So instead of me saying, well, I wasn't trying to do that, and that wasn't my intentions, it's owning up to it hurt you. Or not saying, I'm gonna be real, but stop acting like a little bitch, you know what I mean? Like, just like, that was the anger, right? So instead of doing that, it's just, why not just own the face, not being a bitch? He's a dad. And what I was, the same thing that I expected out of my father was availability and love. He wanted to give his daughters availability and love. And how giving availability and love means knowing what the hell's going on with your kid. So I can't diminish those feelings and make it seem like it's some feminine type of feeling, which is stupid, right? Because I was not wanting to admit that I could have did that better. And I think that's a lot of times where disputes and arguments go too far, because the one person doesn't want to admit that they possibly could have did it better or differently. And on the flip side is that understanding that maybe the other person doesn't know that they possibly could have did it better or differently. So giving grace, right? But also at the same time, stepping up. And we didn't do that. We didn't give grace, and we didn't step up. We just kept fighting. And as long as like the other person felt like, well, I was right in this and I was right in that, it was no real peace on it. And this is definitely a to be continued conversation. And I'm just going to leave it like that. It is a to be continued. And I'm going to keep getting into this, and I'm going to dive more, and we're going to have Josh on, because I think that we don't talk enough about how we argue. And we don't talk enough about how we get the solutions. And we don't talk enough about, like, just how you saw how it triggered me, like how much to open up. We don't want to do this. But the thing is, we have to do this, because if we don't do this, we pass this down. Because, I don't want my daughters passing down thinking that, it's okay to just be right, because it's not. Okay. I know, because they're like, wait a minute. No. I just first want to stop and say that Logistical Lies course is out. www.logisticallies.org is out. It is a trucking course that is meant to really take you from A to B, everything you need to keep you from getting sued, keep you from going bankrupt, and to keep you in a place that you can actually build a successful trucking company. And it's out. I also want to say that I'm going to continue to have more conversations like this because it does. And let me tell you something. If I have 5 listeners or 15 and someday 20,000, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because I believe in it. And I hope that you enjoy these sessions. I hope that it blesses you. And I love all of you guys who continue to support me, continue to share, subscribe, and listen and comment, please. That continues to help support what I'm doing. When you subscribe and comment, it keeps it going and it lets me know that, hey, you guys are there. But I do want to keep these conversations going, and thank you. Again, this is Miranda J with Logistical Lies, to be continued. See you next time.